For more than 100 years, the Haley Red Family Foundation has proudly supported Auburn University scholarships, investing in students' dreams and brighter futures. For over 25 years, we've also stood beside the Sheriff's Girls Ranch, helping young women find hope and opportunity. The Haley Red Family Foundation, building generations of success.
Welcome in again, everybody, to the Terry Bowden Show on the Auburn Undercover Podcast. Today, it's just going to be Terry and me, and we've got a lot to talk about. Coach, it's good to be with you.
Good to be with you. Yeah, and you're right. There is a lot to talk about. Of course, there's a lot of great games this past weekend. While Auburn was sitting, there was a lot of great games going on, and always a good day when Alabama loses. So you can't say it wasn't a great day. It was a good day for that matter. But a lot of really good games. Oklahoma and Alabama and Georgia and Texas and at Texas A&M and South Carolina. But we've got a lot of interesting things to talk about with Auburn, too, because there is a lot of things going on behind the scenes and at practice for Auburn.
Yeah, I mean, there's, Ashton Daniels, the starting quarterback the last couple of weeks. They may sit him this week so they can preserve his red shirt.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I've been trying to read up on it, and I would think y'all that are there more than I was, or you're kind of in tune and locked in a little bit better with the inside Auburn situation than I am, and I'm just trying to. I would think if he wants to, the way you would look at this as a coach, if that young man wants to redshirt, he should have the priority. He didn't ask for the coaching change. He didn't ask for the circumstances. He didn't make a decision who would play most of the games. And I'm assuming he can miss this game and preserve another year of eligibility.
He can, yes.
And so that's on his mind, where he could play this game and the Alabama game. And if he feels like he's would rather do that, my idea is that he probably wants to sit, and then I guess it makes an easier decision from that standpoint. If the young man wants to sit and then save his eligibility, but then I would make sure everybody understands his eligibility may not be at Auburn. It may be somewhere else. New coach comes in, may want to bring his own quarterback, may have a coordinator. So all those things are you wonder who's making that call. But the number one thing is Ashton Daniels probably should have the final say of whether I want to sit or not. Then he could play against Alabama, which is obviously important. Obviously, if you had to pick one of the two, that's the one I'd want to play in as well. But then you've got to ask yourself, if he wanted to play, who would tell him that he couldn't play? Who would tell him that we want you back next year? Which coach has that? Which coach has that lock? Or who else has to tell that coach to have that lock? I think we all realize that that's probably the option that young man has that he wants to take. And I just think we all just assume that would be in the best interest of Auburn. But we have to assume in the nature of the business that depending on who gets the job, he may get lured away, because he becomes eligible anywhere he can be. And then Auburn would have a chance to keep him, I would imagine. But you may know more about whether that's where he wants to finish up or he wants to see his options or whatever.
It sounds like he wants to finish up at Auburn. I mean, he's got a degree from Stanford, if I remember correctly. He played, I think, 30 games out there, so he's played some. My concern a little bit would be, since Auburn moved on from Hugh Freeze, he's really only played one game with Derek Nix calling the plays, and he really hadn't played that much this year. So how do you go get him ready for the Iron Bowl? I mean.
Well, but he's gotten I'm sure he's gotten reps. He's been number 2, I would think, most of the year. And so he would have gotten, how it is during a season, I would say 3 gets almost no reps. He has to watch by osmosis and kind of just watch. But he usually doesn't have to go down a scout team. Number 2 probably gets 40%, maybe 60-40, first teamer to second teamer, depending on how a coach works it. I always tried to go 50-50. Just it made it easier to script the plays that way for practice, that each guy gets the same plays and you repeat it twice, first and second team. But some people don't do that. They would go ahead and give their starter a chance to get maybe 2/3 of the plays, reps, and get him really ready for the game. And if it gets to your second team, but he's had a lot of reps, and he had a great game. And so, and it does beg the question. He's probably awful excited about Derek Nix calling the plays after his last performance. I would think he would be pretty happy about that.
I'm sure he is. What do you if you're Kalen DeBoer and you're coming into Jordan-Hare Stadium for the first time and you've got to win to go to the playoff? Win, you're in, and lose, you're probably out.
Oh yeah.
He's about to feel what some pressure's like in this state.
Yeah, yeah. Well, if he doesn't feel it already, he has no feelings because he'll have pressure on him. And I don't know. Now they're off this week. I'm assuming, or who do they play this week? Is it a non-conference game? Eastern Illinois, not Eastern.
Illinois.
Yeah, Eastern Illinois. I thought it was Eastern Illinois, which is kind of like Mercer, but both those teams you better not ignore. You better pay attention to Mercer just because of the way they play at FCS football. And then Eastern Illinois, I don't know much about Eastern Illinois, but no. But the reality is, no matter how long he's there, if he doesn't get them to, and it very the first time, if he doesn't get them to the SEC championship game or win the SEC championship, or win the national championship, he's never really off the hot seat at Alabama. There is no second place that satisfies them. I guess if he could win the conference and play in the playoffs, they would tolerate that kind of existence. But I don't know that you could say, well, if he made the playoffs for a couple of years but never got to the conference championship, I don't know that they would be fulfilled, or if he made the conference, if you make the conference championship, you're most likely going to make the playoffs as well. But it's a big game that comes up against Auburn. And I would be shocked if he didn't understand the pressure that's on him to win that game. Then it's the Iron Bowl. That's another thing altogether, is that's the Iron Bowl. And historically, as you know, and I know, that game, it's almost won by the underdog as much as the favorite. And it can be a lot of things can happen in that Iron Bowl, and a lot of things have happened in that Iron Bowl. And so everybody's got a week before then. Now, probably you and I talking about the Iron Bowl before the next game is probably what the head coaches are worried about their players thinking about too. It's the old trap game. Now, I do think these aren't a trap game in the sense that it's a conference game that's not quite as good as who you finish up with. These are teams that you got on their schedule for a reason, right before your big rival, the Iron Bowl game. But the pressure after losing last week, you go from being the man in Tuscaloosa to scorned if you don't go out there and win the next one. So a lot of pressure, lot of pressure there, But let's get back to the quarterback question. We know he's got a, I will say that we'll go back and talk about some of the other conference games, but we're assuming now that Ashton Daniels will sit. We'll make that assumption. If we're wrong, then we know he'll be the best guy probably lined up to play. But let's assume that he does sit. And I don't know that they make an announcement on that at all. I don't know if they have to because he's not injured, that he'll sit. They may make an announcement. I don't know that you have to make an announcement if it's not. They may decide to have him on that sideline ready to go if it was something he had to have. Go into a bowl now. You don't want to play around with Mercer because that'd be a nice way to finish the season in a season with so much difficulty. But anyway,
and with 4 straight losing seasons, getting to a bowl and then beating Alabama and winning a bowl. It's your first winning season in 5 years. You tell me those coaches that are on the staff, they don't get excited about that and happy about that. I was covering the Clemson Louisville game on our podcast, on my national podcast. And I said, let me tell y'all something. Everybody says that the season's over for Clemson and it's over for Dabo. I said, you realize he's got 19 straight bowl games? Do you realize how tight he is right now? Nothing's more important to Dabo than his legacy at Clemson. And if he can and if you drop that 1 year and you don't go to a bowl, he has to just win one more.
But I remember he jumped in one coach's arms on the sideline after the game was over, and he won. And Louisville missed their second field goal and an extra point for the game. I've never seen a happier coach, but it would be a great feather in the cap of those assistant coaches at Auburn if they could get to a bowl game and beat Alabama and get into the bowl win. But right now, I think the thing that is they've got Mercer, 9-1 Mercer, that just beat the snot out of a UTC. Chattanooga, 63 to 14 or 60? I forget what it was. 63 to 17. 5 touchdown passes by their quarterback. It's the second year in a row they've won the Southern Conference. And again, that doesn't mean they're a Power 4 level football team, but it does mean you got to be careful not to go out there and lay an egg or be thinking about Alabama.
Well, like New Mexico State a couple of years ago.
Absolutely, they can happen. I'm saying it happens. It happens a lot. If you look at the entire season across the country, it happens all over the country every weekend. And you say, how in the world can that happen? And it does. And so you just have to, Texas A&M down 30-3 at halftime. How in the world does that happen? But it does. Now, anyway, the main thing is go out there and play your best. But let's assume that Ashton Daniels does not play. He sits so he can play for the Alabama game. Do they start the Deuce Knight? Do they start Deuce Knight, or do they start Jackson Arnold? What's the thinking around Auburn?
The thinking over the weekend was that Jackson Arnold would play. Deuce Knight is tremendously talented. He can throw the ball a mile, and he's athletic. I think he's had some issues being able to process what he sees, and so they're still trying to bring him along. So I'm not sure. Next year, probably with a new offense, it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah,
interesting to see what happens with him, and if he stays, and I'm guessing that Jackson Arnold will not be at Auburn next year. That's my guess.
Yeah, I mean, he also could jump back in the portal and see what he can finish up with his season. The only thing about Deuce Knight is there's a lot of reasons to play him. If he can pick up enough of your offense to run your offense, see what he can do. And you can always throw Jackson Arnold in the game. Sometimes it's more difficult to start with Jackson Arnold and go to Deuce than it is let him start and let him see what he can do. I don't know if they'll do that. They may feel like he's not quite ready to do that. But I mean, you've already fired your coach, and it is your FCS opponent, and he is a quarterback that you thought had great potential, great promise. And and I do cover all the teams across the country. I can't tell you how many true freshmen are playing great football across the country. I mean, great football. I mean, you got the ACC, you got Mason Heinrich at Pitt, who's the top quarterback probably in the ACC, a true freshman there, and Sagapolitelli at Arizona State is unbelievable. He's a true freshman. Just to throw out some of these guys that are just true freshmen, they're playing phenomenal football. But that being said, I don't know that I wouldn't start Deuce Knight and then let Jackson Arnold be the guy. If he's going to transfer anyway, if he's had plenty of opportunity. The new staff has got nothing to lose. They're kind of playing with house money a little bit. But unless they don't feel that he's quite ready to go. But it does give a spark sometimes. Like LSU went out there and played the backup, didn't they? They had Nussmeier. I think they played the backup. They go out there and win it 23-21. And Nussmeier was one of the top quarterbacks in the country. And that's a tough decision to decide. There's a kid that grew up wanting to go to LSU, that put all his marbles in LSU, that never jumped in the portal. And whether it was his fault or the offensive line's fault or the coach's fault, things didn't work out for him. And then he had to sit and see them take their next victory. But they play a quarterback that was not going to be one that everybody thought would be playing at that time. And so, but anyway, whether they start Deuce Knight, you would think they should get him in that game. Hopefully, he'll get in that game. Sometimes when you wait and wait, you end up waiting too late. And you don't ever play him as much. And so, we'll have to see how that goes. And but that'll be, I guess that'll be the next question, which they'll go. But I don't know if they made an announcement yet. They're starting Jackson Arnold.
Not yet. I guess my other question would be, if you're How do you decide if let me go back. If you're Hugh Freeze and you were at Auburn for 3 years, you signed Peyton Thorne,
right,
and it didn't work out, and you signed Jackson Arnold, and it didn't work out, and you signed a freshman, and you didn't really play him. And you look around, and I'm not beating up Hugh Freeze, but I mean, you look around the country, and you've got this true freshman starting, and you got this transfer starting,
right.
and you got this freshman starting. What's the problem?
Well, no. I think that's the 800-pound gorilla in the closet that everybody asks. Well, why did they go out there against Vanderbilt? And every single offensive statistic that you could want, they checked all the boxes. Both 200-yard rushers, two wide receivers, a quarterback threw for $1 million, ran for $1 million, didn't turn the ball over, but maybe one time. Every single offensive stat, they didn't win the game, but they checked all the boxes offensively. Offensive line played great, and you wonder why. And then you wonder why some people can insert a second quarterback or a third quarterback, and they still end up playing very, very well. You know, we saw at Missouri. Everybody talks about Eli Drinkwitz. I think he's a great coach. I don't know who's on whose short list he's on as far as other schools, and he may be very happy where he is, but he lost his starting quarterback, Sam Horn, the first series of the first game. Bo Pribula was really his backup, but they were both 1-2. Then he lost him for the year and went with his third teamer. Now, he couldn't beat Texas A&M with his third teamer, but I think he came back last week and won last week with his third teamer, and his third teamer is a true freshman. But that goes with a lot of people, with a lot of coaches that are playing backups. Penn State, their quarterback, Drew Allar, was hurt for the year. They put their backup quarterback in, and they won this past weekend against Purdue. And so that's just one of those things. Some guys can fit them in and get the most of them. That's what you kind of need to do. But you can run out. You can run out or just not have enough tools in the toolbox, and it doesn't work out. So regardless, that's not a huge decision right now, you know. And it's obvious that Ashton Daniels seems like a pretty good selection as a quarterback that worked out very well, but didn't play, you know. And so,
mature kid who manages the game and really made some plays. I mean, it just seemed like to me that they were more. And I don't want to beat up Hugh Freeze, but it just seemed like to me that I think you got to give DJ Durkin a lot of credit. I think you got to give Derek Nix a lot of credit, and the whole offense. The whole offense.
But Ashton Daniels had been pretty smart. Graduated from Stanford 3 years. He was a dual threat. Played a lot of football. Was a good dual threat quarterback. And came in with a lot of maturity, a lot of experience, and that really showed. He showed a lot of poise, a lot of maturity in the way he played against Vanderbilt. So again, it'll be but now we're talking about different coaches. I think whether DJ Durkin makes the call, I'm sure he'll turn to Derek Nix and say, and the offensive staff, since he's a defensive, say, what do y'all think? How does it look? He'll have his 2 cents in there too. I would imagine that'd be kind of a group decision in a behind closed doors, a group decision, which it would quite often be when the head coach is gone.
How do you prepare if you're Alabama coming into Jordan-Hare? I know we're back on the Iron Bowl again, but if you're Alabama coming into Jordan-Hare and you really don't have, because Derek Nix called one game, and then in all likelihood he's going to come in and call his second game of the season with a different quarterback that's going to be starting the Iron Bowl. How do you prepare for that?
Well, there's a book on everybody, and I've said this a lot of times. There's a book on everybody calling plays. Derek Nix, he's had to have called plays somewhere, and I guarantee he's somewhere along the line he called plays at some point, unless that was the first game he's ever called plays. You know him better than I do.
He didn't call him at Southern Miss, and he didn't call him for Freeze at Ole Miss, and he didn't call him for Kiffin at Ole Miss.
Well, you know what? He comes in, he's got one game. You got one game to study, and the point I was trying to make is when I face a coordinator offensively or defensively, I'm going to go back and study everything I can study that I have time to study to see any tendencies, because what coordinators tend to go back to the things they like to do year after year. In critical situations, they'll make the same type of critical calls, or they like certain types of things at certain times. But Derek was a breath of fresh air with that offense, and But I don't think they still got to play football. They still got to line up and play football, and they've got to play formations. They got to play personnel groupings, and it may be a little more difficult is what you have to prepare for. But you may play a little more base defense, but you may consider the fact that the quarterback hadn't played a lot of reps at Auburn, and you may bring pressure. But right now Alabama's got to make sure they don't make mistakes. The biggest thing about Alabama is they went the entire season as one of the top teams in the country, not turning the ball over. Quarterback had 26 touchdown passes and 1 interception. They had 3 turnovers in that game, and one of them was a pick 6 and 2 fumbles, and that's what cost them the game. They were only favored by 6.5, and I said they're going to win by 7. I said I don't know how they're going to win by 7 because they don't turn the ball over. That was my final mistake. I said they don't turn the ball over, and they're going to win by 7 somehow. It's going to. Ty Simpson has been playing too well, and son of a gun, he didn't play as well.
He missed some throws, and
missed some big throws.
I'm not sure that again, I'm just kind of spitballing here, and
right.
Having watched this, the Iron Bowl for, I won't reveal my age, but having watched it for a few decades now.
Yep.
If you're missing those kind of throws at home, you come into that place to be wild. I mean, It will be an absolute madhouse. So it'll be interesting to see how that whole the staff, the players, there's been a lot made of Auburn's home field advantage, Jordan Hare, especially in the Iron Bowl.
That's right.
I told you I was at the doctor earlier, and doctor came in and he saw I had a sweatshirt on, and he said, I'm an Alabama guy. And I said, well, he said I was looking forward to going to the Iron Bowl here next week. He said, but he said, in this situation, these are the kind of games that Auburn wins 8 out of 10 of them down there.
Yeah, I was 3-0. I was 3-0 in Auburn and 2-0-2 in Birmingham. They still played their games in Birmingham when I was at Auburn, but home field was a definite, and it went down to the last play almost every year.
In the 94 game. I mean, I'm still convinced that was a first down at the end down there.
Oh yeah, we should have. Yeah, we really should have beat them in 94, and then even in 96 when we lost. They drove 90. Freddie Kitchens drove 97 yards with no timeouts and just made you sick. That was Gene Stallings' last football game that he coached over there. But anyway, they'll both teams will have to get by this game this week coming up, and then get ready for that special game, the Auburn Alabama game, and what that's going to present. But I would think Derek Nix is going to present a few difficult problems for them and knowing how to prepare. I don't think Ty Simpson, I do think I've watched him all year. He's been very consistent. His father's the head football coach at UT Martin. He's got a good football IQ. He was raised around football. He's had some really good games, especially with not making mistakes. It's like he was raised a coach's kid, a coach's kid like Pat Nix for me was a coach's kid. I like having coaches' kids at quarterback, either NFL guy or a coach's kid. I like those two because they come with football knowledge, and so it'll be interesting how that happens. But pressure is pressure. Any way you look at it, pressure is pressure.
Yeah, and I was really kind of surprised. I mean, Ty Simpson's played so well all year.
Yeah.
I was really kind of – he seemed to be having kind of
he struggled. Oh, no, he did. No, definitely struggled. That was a huge factor in their losing the football game. And now they've got to get that part back. They got to get that part together again along that line. So it should be pretty interesting how they'll develop. They've got to get their kinks worked out against Eastern Illinois, and Auburn's got to make sure they get a good, healthy win against Mercer, and then they can start thinking about that Iron Bowl. Other than that, though, coaches, how about in the coaching search, or is there anything happening that you might be aware of? I know the same names seem to be, or I should say, maybe it's being narrowed down to a few favorites or a few what appears to be favorites.
Well, I think that the names that have been floating around for those who haven't been reading the site, John Summerall at Tulane,
right? Mm-hmm.
He's raised in Huntsville, played I think at Grissom.
Mm-hmm.
He's got he certainly has and was a head coach at Troy, so he's been around. And then you got Eli Drinkwitz, who we talked about at Missouri, who spent some time at Auburn, and really liked it. Kenny Dillingham, who was also he was at Auburn for a year as the offensive coordinator under Gus Malzahn. Loved Auburn, didn't love Gus, but loved Auburn. Jeff Brom is a name that has come up. He's his alma mater, of course. Dillingham is too. DJ Durkin, obviously, he'll have an opportunity. Rhett Lashley, who was announced he has a new extension at SMU. I'm not sure that he signed it.
Right.
I know that Elko 2 years ago they announced he had a new extension at Duke, and then 3 days later he went to A&M. So I'm not sure. And then you got Brent Key at Georgia Tech, who is at his alma mater. The other name that kind of floated around was James Franklin. I believe he interviewed earlier last week. I don't think he's in it, at least not right now. It sounds like Virginia Tech and Arkansas are kind of his options right now. It sounds like Arkansas is leaning in that direction. I'm not sure which one of those I'd take. Arkansas's got more money, but they're both not the easiest jobs in the world.
Well, it's a matter of what kind of commitment. I think any coach going in right now, going into a position, if he has a choice. Or he's going to scrutinize the situation. He's going to find out what their NIL picture is and what their how they're going to handle NILs and how they're going to handle those packages and pay their coaches and things like that. Arkansas has enough big hitters. The rap on Arkansas and the state of Mississippi, the state of Arkansas, population-wise, you didn't have enough players. You had to go out of state to get, Texas, you had to go out of state to get enough players. But now with NIL, that kind of eliminates those boundaries.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden, that if you've got a good NIL package and you know what you're doing and you're committed to it, you've got a chance to really change your roster around pretty quickly. And so that changes what's that?
Look at Texas Tech. I mean, those guys on the defensive line, I mean, they could play for it. There'd be a bunch of those guys playing on Sundays.
Yeah, Texas Tech, if you haven't, if any of our listeners haven't really read up on all the teams, Texas Tech made an unbelievable commitment to building a football roster with the NILs.
And everything.
But everything they've done, they've got some big hitters. And if you don't go that way, now you're going to have a hard time. You're going to have one. First of all, you got to be a good football coach. There are too many good football coaches out there. And a lot of times you can't buy your way into a good football coach. Sometimes you think you can pay your way in, and all you've got is you've won. It's like recruiting. Sometimes you win a recruiting battle, and all you did was get the number one recruit. You didn't get the number one player, because quite often everybody wants the same guy, and they push the stock up. Well, he ends up not being nearly as good as everybody thought he was. And that player that really nobody hardly recruited but a couple of people. You just have to really, really do a great search on your coaches, because you have to understand. I mean, people say, well, John Sumrall is not a Power 4 coach, but I've coached against him. He can coach now. You're not going to go wrong with him. DJ Durkin if you got him, could he keep Nix and keep that thing going like that? Or do you want to not? Is that a viable option? I would think if he wins the next two games, that might very well be a viable option,
And he's been a head coach too. And I'm sure that, there was some controversy at Maryland, but I'm sure that, I think he was pretty much cleared in that situation. But,
right.
I'm sure he's learned. You always learn. And I've always said, we walked in at Florida, and Ron Zook's first time head coach.
Right.
Would we have been better if he had been a head coach 2 years somewhere else? Probably, because those mistakes that you make, you're making them them at Florida instead of, UCF or
I thought,
FAU.
Yeah, I thought Peter did a nice job. Who am I talking about? The article that was on Auburn Undercover about the number of assistant coaches that are head coaches in the SEC and a number of coordinators. And I just think it's amazing how many guys were not Power 4 coaches that have taken over the jobs. They're assistant coaches, and we've seen it over and over again. You get the right assistant coach and at the right time, whether it be Bob Stoops, who went from Florida as an offensive defensive coordinator to Oklahoma. We remember that. Kirby Smart went from Alabama to at Georgia just the right time, you know. And it's kind of sometimes that is very much the way to go. What you've got to do is
Auburn hasn't hired an assistant since Doug Barfield.
No, Auburn. That's not been Auburn's way. Auburn's gone out and tried to find somebody that's won where he was. Won no matter what level he has been or what part of the country have they been successful, you know, and won. And I think that's a good indicator too. Does the body of work show that someone could win there? You know, and I know we haven't talked about it on the air, and I would just wonder. I mean, I'd love to understand exactly why Jimbo Fisher's name doesn't come up anymore. I know you and I talked, and there were things said when they played Auburn for the national championship. Maybe things were said before or after the game that people are held on to. Or I'll say this. One thing Auburn has done a pretty good job of in the past, I know because I was a part of that search, they keep the name of the guy they're going to hire. You got no idea who it is until you know who it is. They do a great job of throwing the wrong names out there, throwing names out there to keep names off the one they want to hire. Now, it's been a long time, but Auburn has been very good of not exposing who they really want because they don't want somebody else going after it, you know, or somebody else up in the ante and keeping it quiet, you know. And so that's been a big part of their plan. And you know what the reality is in on this day of social media, if your name comes up too early as the lead candidate, well, that gives all those people who want the other guy time to rip you to shreds on social media. 2 weeks, 3 weeks to find everything they can. You know how it is in politics. It's like politics. They've got 2 or 3 weeks to find every bad game you've ever coached, every bad record. And so it's almost better off to keep it quiet or try not to let it out who you want to hire. And so I would think there's a great possibility that because most schools want to kind of keep it under the radar if they can, you know. And if an AD is, and I'm sure John is pretty good at that, he's not going to throw out all the names he's really interested in or got in his pocket, you know, to everybody. And you just got to read between the lines a little bit, but it'll be interesting who that goes now as that search continues. And to me, that kind of goes back to, you know, Ashton Daniels. He'll probably want to wait and see how they're going to make that decision. If he does decide to redshirt, there's not a whole lot of people on that staff that can tell him we're going to, you know, if he's redshirting, it's because that's what he wants to do. And if he's redshirting for Auburn, which I'm sure he's kind of, you know, he made the decision to come here. And if he sees that this is the place that the new guy wants to play him, but there are guys that come in and bring their quarterback or they bring a coordinator and now you got to decide, is this the guy that wants to use me or feels like I fit in and all those things, you know? But at least he's got a little bit of a record already now here after the Vanderbilt game. He's got a record as to what could be the case.
Yeah, I mean it's you know, with so many jobs, you know, you mentioned Jimbo. It wouldn't shock me if they Jimbo get a job. I think that and you know more about the Florida State situation. I know enough. You know more than I did, but you know, I know that his reputation is keep asking.
Right.
And then he got everything you wanted at A&M and didn't win. And so you know, okay, so you had everything that you ever wanted at A&M. And you kept asking at Florida State. It ended ugly at Florida State. He walked out the door. Didn't end great at A&M. Now, look, there aren't many guys sitting out there who have a national championship ring either.
No.
You know, so but does Jimbo walk into a situation like at Virginia Tech, for example, if James Franklin doesn't go there? Do you walk in there and if you're Jimbo, I mean, they don't have the money that A&M did. They don't have the pedigree that Florida State has. So I think that's a concern.
Well, you know, Jimbo doesn't. The money it's not going to be a factor in the rest of his life. The money is only a factor in that it represents how much your worth is, where you stand in that hierarchy of eligible coaches. How hot am I?
I guess I mean more about facilities, NIL.
Oh no, I agree with you, but I'm telling you, they do have to pay the going rate to some extent. Mm-hmm. They don't have to pay I mean, with Lane Kiffin, you're not paying the going rate. You're paying the top rate. It's top dollar. But with the Jimbo, you don't need the top dollar because he's got the top dollar already in his pocket. Now that doesn't mean he'd make less. It's going to be 7 or 8 probably, or whatever it is whatever that top lot that's not the very top is. I'm just more concerned, and I'll say this about Florida State. Florida State was lacking in facilities terribly. My dad was there 34 years, and my dad was able to build a powerhouse without facilities because he had done it over time, kept his staff together, great coaches. They kept winning. They won because they were in Florida. It was a great place to go. It was a flashy. There were Deion Sanders and all those things, but they never had the money to improve their facilities. Jimbo goes in there, and he had worked with Nick, and he'd seen a guy that demanded that you have the best of everything. And so he told them, said, y'all can't win unless you start doing this. And somewhere along the line, he made people mad a little bit because he said, you need to do it. Well, they end up figuring out, yeah, we got to do it. Well, they've done it now, and he's no longer there. And so I will say that he won a championship. And I do know he can coach. I've only sat in the box with him.
Oh, yeah.
He was always sitting in my press box for about 12 years when I'm calling plays and I'm asking him what he likes and what he doesn't like. And I know when a guy is a good game day coach. I don't know what happened at Texas A&M. I know if excuse me, if you coach long enough, there'll be a tough year in there. There'll be a year that you've got to get through. And but anyway, it's just curious because the fact that he's made a statement around the country, I want to get back into coaching. I want to go somewhere where they're committed to winning. He's made those statements himself. It'll be interesting to me where he'll be, where he'll end up, and
I think he'll get one if he really wants one. I think that with so many jobs open, and I think you're going to see some crazy things happen. I mean, some loony things over the next few weeks. Especially with this playoff. Now, I mean, if you're Lane Kiffin and you end up with a bye at Ole Miss and you want to go to Florida, all of a sudden things get sticky, and then you look at Brian Kelly, he's out there. You look at James Franklin, you look at Jimbo, and you look at all these jobs that are going to be open. I mean, you're looking at upwards of 30 plus, maybe 35 jobs open. And when you're talking about that much movement, guys who don't have jobs, they become, especially guys who won a national championship or played for one, like Brian Kelly, or guys who've won 10 games, for a number of years, like James Franklin, or those guys become pretty attractive when you're looking at hiring. I mean, I'm just telling you, there are going to be guys that get jobs that are going to really surprise some people. I mean, they're going to announce head coaches. People are like, really, this guy?
Well, that's what the thing. It's kind of that's the way it has to be. That's the way it is, kind of. But I mean, I'm sure Auburn. When I got hired at Auburn, it was like, this guy, you're going to hire this guy, And I've heard of his dad. I hadn't heard of him, And sometimes that's kind of the way it goes when you hire an assistant, or even Coach Dye when he came in from Wichita, Wyoming. When he came in from Wyoming, I mean, a lot of people didn't know exactly why he went to Wyoming to get a coach, But it's got to be a pretty. What's that?
He had been at East Carolina before that.
Well, East Carolina, he had a little time in East Carolina. But I think the other thing the biggest thing was he had spent a good 10 years with Bear Bryant, and he knew he'd been on his staff, and knowing how Bear Bryant ran his ship, and knowing the insides of that operation wasn't a bad tool to have in your toolbox either. And Coach Dye had that very much he understood that very, very well, about how they built their program and what it took to compete with those people. So anyway, I don't know that we'll know anything more. All we'll know is that the coaches that are on the staff, they've got a great opportunity to show what they can do this week. Just take care of business. It'll be interesting how they handle the quarterback situation. We've already said probably Ashton Daniels will sit so he can play the Alabama game. Do you start Jackson Arnold, or do you start Deuce Knight? Or do you take do you try to get ahead with Jackson Arnold and get Deuce Knight into the game? I would hope they could get Deuce Knight into the game. I think you want to see if you're going to possibly see what could happen. You'd like to see what he can do, unless he's so below what Jackson Arnold is. Just makes you wonder with the explosives they were last week and how good they were offensively last week. That'll be an interesting game, in that regard. On that,
and the other thing is the rest of the staff, including DJ, whether he's the head coach at Auburn or wherever. I remember, when I got fired in the past on different staffs that we always, and especially at Florida, I remember Ron walking in and he said, "Hey, look, we're all coaching for our next jobs. This is our interview." And we did a pretty good job holding it together. We ended up beating your dad in Tallahassee the first time in 20 years. We ended up winning out, and But it doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes it goes the opposite direction. So
no, you go out and play your best, coach your best. That's all you can do is to coach your best. You don't know how it's going to end up anyway. You can't really go out there and politic for a job because jobs they haven't picked coaches yet. It's just there's going to be a lot of movement, and so that's just the nature of the business. And we've seen more schools than I've ever seen that have coached that fired their coach halfway through the season, and the teams tend to play. They usually play pretty good for a week or two, and then it kind of falls off after that. Florida ended up playing a real good game against Ole Miss. They didn't play terrible against Kentucky, and I missed on that one because I figured, well, they cashed in against Kentucky.
That's what I thought.
So they're not going to bring it back against Ole Miss, and yet they did. They were there all the way to the wire on Ole Miss to the end of the third quarter. It was still a tight ball game, and before it got away from them, and that's the way that one was. Arkansas, LSU made a little change of quarterback situation, and were able to hold on against Arkansas to win that game. There was some good games in the conference. Let's talk about before we go on to some other things. Talk about some of the big games in the SEC this past week, and there were some good ones. We mentioned I think we've already mentioned Oklahoma and Alabama in that game. Alabama had the longest at-home winning streak going on, and it's funny how I don't know if anybody knows the odds of making it to the ACC championship. A&M plus 120. Georgia plus 230, Alabama plus 260, Ole Miss plus 850. So really, Texas A&M now got themselves locked in. Probably Georgia, most likely Texas A&M and Georgia. If something doesn't happen to Texas A&M and Texas, I would imagine if Texas were to knock out Texas A&M, would that put Georgia in there with Alabama again?
It depends on the Iron Bowl.
Georgia's got to beat the Iron Bowl. I'm just seeing how the odds are. Ole Miss, you know what? Ole Miss has got to play the Egg Bowl, and you never know what's going to happen in the Egg Bowl.
Hey, and Lane Kiffin managed to lose that thing a couple of times when he wasn't supposed to, especially 3 years ago when it looked like he was going to Auburn. If I remember right, he peed down his leg in the Egg Bowl. That thing's big too now. It matters.
It's huge. It is huge, and Mississippi State has played some really good football. They've laid an egg a couple of times, but they've really got themselves. They've kind of righted that ship. So you got really the four top teams right now: A&M, Georgia, Alabama, Ole Miss, Oklahoma. Probably playing more for the conference football playoff than anything else right now. But if they could beat Texas, Texas A&M, Oklahoma. Well, Oklahoma. As soon as Oklahoma got left, they got
LSU, I believe.
They got LSU left, but they're probably playing right now, knock off LSU, and they got a chance to play in the college football playoff.
They got Missouri this weekend. They've got Missouri.
Yeah, Missouri, then LSU, right?
They've got both Missouri and LSU at home, but Ole Miss is playing in Starkville, so that the cowbells will be ringing over there too.
Oh, I know it'll be a tough. Every one of the games there are going to be tough games. I think as far as we don't yet quite know how the season's going to end up, and we all know that it comes down to the wire on those games. But Georgia played against Georgia, had a good win against Texas. I don't know. To me, Kirby Smart is more like a dirt farmer, good old country boy, hard-nosed football. Steve Sarkisian grew up in California. Played at Southern Cal, BYU, and it looks like to me that Georgia coach just a little more down and dirty, and Texas just doesn't play the big games quite as good right now. They don't run the ball very well. I think they rushed for 20-something yards in that ball game. They don't run it very well. Don't play as good in big games, and then what Kirby Smart did, he went out there and showed how serious he was about that game. They went for it. I think they're on 30-yard line. They go through it on 4th down and 1 and make it. Then they go for it again on 4th down in their own territory and pull them off sides for 5 yards and make it. And maybe the biggest surprise of all, which a lot of coaches don't have the nerve to do it, he finally scores and goes up 21-10. Then he kicks an onside kick and recovers it, and then puts a nail in the coffin, goes up 28-10. And that pretty much did it. But there was it's almost like there's a guy that made the adjustments that has his kids ready to pound on you. And by pounding on you, they win in the fourth quarter. And so until Texas can go out there and win games like that, that's a third game they've lost to Georgia in the last 2 years, And so it just, to me, there's Austin, there's the woke liberal Austin, and then there's blue collar Auburn, Georgia, that blue collar dirt farmer type tough guy, that I think we are now over here the way we play football. And
it's interesting to me that Texas and Oklahoma, and look, both have great traditions, both got good programs. All
sure do.
But coming into the conference, the SEC, and going through the grind, and Texas had a pretty easy schedule compared to the rest of the conference. Yeah. I mean, they've been they've got to walk the last 2 years compared to everybody else. But it's interesting to see how they're adjusting to the grind of the conference. I think it's starting to show.
It really is. And I think historically, to be honest, I mean, I say historically, at least the last, Oklahoma is kind of a blue collar state and a blue collar team, even though it's an elite program, a very elite program, not just because of what Barry Switzer did, but Bud Wilkinson before him, I think had the all-time record for 34, 35 straight victories before Barry Switzer was there. And the great success he had. This was way before Bob Stoops was there, and the success that Stoops had while he was there. But Texas just seems to me, it's like a lot of things have changed in Texas. But they're not big time program, got great facilities, great money, all those resources. But it's kind of a more of an upscale, upscale program and community. The whole thing's a little different than old SEC towns, But anyway. Biggest thing was Kirby Smart showed what it took to win a big game, made big calls, showed what he did to make big games, and Texas had to go limping home on the thing, and had to say, well, maybe next year. Texas has another chance against A&M, but I think Texas A&M, which brings us to Texas A&M, and that's probably their near miss that they had against South Carolina. But man, was that an unbelievable game. For those of y'all who didn't get a chance to watch it, Texas A&M down 30-3 at halftime. I mean, everything that could go wrong went wrong. Everything South Carolina did worked. Everything Texas A&M tried didn't work. As good as Marcel Reed played, probably his worst half of football that he's ever played. I want to say he fumbled a ball that went for a scoop and score, had a couple of interceptions, 3 turnovers. Second half, they laid it on him now. I mean, Marcel Reed threw for 434 yards in the game, and they scored. They tied it up probably early. I think with about 11 minutes left in the fourth quarter. They got that last score to go up by 1 with about, I don't know if it was 7 minutes left or 11 minutes left. But amazing comeback for Texas A&M to remain undefeated. And, buddy, that was an amazing game there. As they have pretty much locked themselves into the SEC championship game. I don't think they can get knocked out of the playoffs. But I don't know if the final game against Texas can knock them out of the SEC championship game. I don't know that it can. With only one loss, I think they still would have a shot. They haven't been beat by Texas. I would think they still have a chance to be right there against somebody.
I'm looking at the standings here while I'm pulling this up.
Well, they're the only undefeated, so we know they're number 1.
Right.
And they don't play.
With one loss in the conference, you've got Georgia, Ole Miss, Alabama. So I'm not sure that A&M and Ole Miss even played. So
did Alabama play Ole Miss? Did Texas A&M may not have played any of those guys? There's no head-to-head, are there?
That's what I was just looking at.
I don't think I saw any head-to-head with Georgia, Alabama, or Ole Miss and Texas A&M on that. I don't think they played any of those teams.
They haven't. They played in the conference: Auburn, Mississippi State, Florida, Arkansas, LSU, Missouri, South Carolina, Texas. That's it.
So that's it. They have yet to. They won't play any of those, so you don't have any head-to-head losses. So it'll be interesting how it goes. Still a lot of football to be played, like I say, against each other. But that was a huge game. Georgia, Florida gave Georgia a good game. Georgia came back and went ahead and won the game at the end. But Florida, after I thought Florida would really send it in after the way they played against Kentucky. They came back and played a very, very good game. But right now, you've got the top teams in the conference. I've got about 5 that has a possibility of making the playoffs. When you look at the college football playoffs, I think the teams that I had going in having a real good chance to make it. You talk about Texas A&M, Georgia, Alabama, Ole Miss, and Oklahoma.
Yeah,
and I think that's what you're going. I think you're going to end up seeing. What's that? Texas would be a 6 team, but they would have to knock somebody else. I don't know that you're going to get more than 5 teams, and that would mean that 3 teams come out of the Big Ten: Indiana, Ohio State, and probably Oregon. The way Oregon's playing, Oregon just doesn't screw up towards the end. You got 3 teams in the Big Ten, 5 teams in the SEC. Notre Dame, that's 9. Texas Tech, maybe the only team 10. Actually, there could be 2. There could be Texas Tech and maybe BYU or one other team, Utah or BYU in the Big 12, and then whoever. Right now, it looks like in the other schools that you've got out there. Gosh, did Memphis lose to Navy this past weekend? Or no, South Florida. South Florida lost to Navy. So that'll be interesting. Who's the number 1 team from that level? Tulane may be back in the hunt now for a possibility of being the other conference team coming in.
Well, and you got Vandy sitting there at 14, and they've only got 2 losses. They end up with Tennessee, and they got Kentucky this weekend, and they've got at Tennessee. So they're not out of the playoff. No,
they're not out. I sit there watching all the odds are and the number of teams that would have to pass over. You've got to be ranked in that college football playoff rankings, where they rank and who would have to lose to fall below them. And so there are possibilities for other teams, but man, it's hard to pick for sure who's going to make it as far as that's concerned. Right now, the most important thing is if you can win your conference and get a bye, or you become the number 2 team and you get a home field game, the first round that you play at home. And that can be awful important for you to get there.
The other interesting thing to me is, since I think Kentucky tied in 74, maybe with Alabama, but they were on probation. Outside of that, outside of those Big 6, Auburn, Alabama, LSU, Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, nobody else has won the conference since Ole Miss in the 60s. Will A&M break through? That's the question. I mean,
it's funny that, and they so far so good. They've shown they've had the ability to do it, but and I have a hard time when things change so much. Most of those old years, Texas A&M didn't get to our conference till recently, and then they have not found the right guy. I think the last time they were 10-0. What are they 10-0 right now? I want to say 10-0. 10-0. The last time they were 10-0, Spike Dykes was it not Spike Dykes? It was
R.C. Slocum. I think
R.C. Slocum in 92.
Okay.
They were in 1992. R.C. Slocum. They were 10-0 that year, and because I know I got to Auburn the very next year, and but again, they've done a great job. I will say that they've done a great job, which kind of interesting. I mean, the Heisman, Heisman, I just don't know if there is a Heisman, but I'm thinking about odds right now. And as we're getting close to the end, is there a definite Heisman guy that everybody loves? You have to think the two quarterbacks at Ohio State and Indiana nationally are getting the most exposure. Marcel Reed is undefeated. If it's a quarterback, usually you have to go undefeated, Marcel Reed was still undefeated. He put a lot of numbers up, but he had a bad first half. Ty Simpson was kind of if he could have kept winning and won the conference. It's kind of like the Heisman Trophy for those who want to bet on the Heisman Trophy. It's always selected the weekend after the conference championship. So all these quarterbacks going to play a conference championship game, and then they'll have the Heisman weekend is that next weekend. When they have the Heisman Awards dinner and all that banquet and all those things. That's why you mentioned like Vanderbilt. What if Diego Pablo wins the rest of his games, goes to the ACC championship and wins that?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's got the best story of anybody in the whole country, I think, as far as an exciting quarterback. Him and Chambliss at Ole Miss are two of the more interesting stories, that are have candidates.
And for those who are interested, the New York Times just dropped this, just came out just a couple hours ago. The latest odds for the Heisman: Fernando Mendoza -115.
Right. Yeah, I got him up.
Julian Sayin +225. Marcel Reed +500. Diego Pavia +2200. Gunnar Stockton +2500.
That's what I've got. I think you pretty much, if the way the schedules are going, Mendoza and Sayin are going to be undefeated playing against each other. Now you've got the two undefeated quarterbacks in the two top teams in the country playing for the conference championship. Mendoza already has his ESPN highlight from the Penn State game. Sayin throws for over 80%. The only quarterback throwing 80% or better. Julian Sayin is 80%. They're talking up there. They say he's the next Drew Brees. For those who know how accurate Drew Brees was as a professional football player and a college player, but he's the 80% completion percentage there. And then Mendoza had the play of the year, I guess, against Penn State when they came back to win that game. And it's funny. I was trying to tell people how people will hold it against Texas A&M for playing such a bad first half. Well, Indiana did about the same thing against Penn State.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? How long that lasts? Till about the next game.
That's right.
Indiana won 31-4-7 or something against Purdue, whoever it was. They've already forgotten. That's just a W. Those games become W's. They're no longer almost lost games. After about 2 or 3 weeks, close games become W's or L's. They forget about all the other stuff, and they remember, what have you done for me lately? So anyway, that's kind of I don't know that in the SEC, the way we've kind of beaten up on each other, the Heisman Trophy, if there's a quarterback that has to have unbelievable stats or he has to lead his team to an undefeated season or a special year, and right now probably Marcel Reed is that guy as close as anything if he can keep on going. But he would have to have a great game. A great game against Texas, because everybody will watch the Texas A&M Texas game. Then a great game in the SEC championship game. It might get him back in the hunt, But the way it looks right now with the odds out there, Mendoza at 100, and Julius Sayin at 200. At least I'm using FanDuel. I don't know what book you're using to look at those. I pulled FanDuel up earlier to see what the odds were, but it's about the same.
Yeah, it looks like I'm looking at the New York Times, but it's an MGM.
Yeah, they're all about the same. You're not going to make a lot of money. If you want to make a little money, take a chance, roll the dice on Marcel Reed. He's 5.5 to 1. At least you'll have a little more. You'll have a little more fun with your money, but the other two are probably in the best position to be right there.
And how about Gunnar Stockton? After he took a little bit of criticism earlier in the year, and he's jumped up. Now he's number 5 in the Heisman race. He's made some great throws.
He is, and he's done an outstanding job. And again, if you think about the Heisman, I know for the 10 years I was with ABC, I voted for the Heisman, so I got to vote on that. And it becomes a real popularity contest. It's not for the best NFL player. It's not necessarily the best player. It's who makes the most exciting plays or has the most exciting stats on a great team or something like that. If you're a quarterback, and 20 out of the last 25 years, it's been a quarterback. Been 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers. Then last year it was a wide receiver / DB. So and before 2000, it was almost always running back. Your 1,000, your running backs won the Heismans. And then once we got to the spread offenses around 2000, when everybody was kind of spreading it out, 20 out of the 25 Heismans have been quarterbacks. That's kind of where it is right now. And so I don't see it changing a lot this year. Although who's the linebacker for Texas Tech? Who's the one that's getting all the publicity? Rodriguez, where does he play? Arizona State?
I think it's Arizona. If you hadn't asked me, I could have told you.
I don't know. That awful. I just remember watching highlights, and there's a linebacker that's just killing it for somebody, and Rodriguez is.
When I watch Texas Tech, I can't watch anything with those defensive linemen.
I know they're smart, aren't they? If you're gonna pay NIL money, pay it for running backs and defensive linemen. That's for sure. It's been a good rule for about 40 years. It doesn't change.
Before we go, let me ask you. I want to ask you about Florida State.
Yeah.
And then we need to talk about our sponsor. What's Florida State going to do here? I mean, it's getting they're going to have to make a decision here pretty soon on Mike Norvell.
No, I don't think that. I think they've already made what they're going to do, unless they got. I mean, it looks like he has a good chance of getting to a bowl. He's got 5-5 right now. Just needs one more win. He's got Florida to end the season with, but I think he's got one more that he's going to be favored in before that game. And I think at 6 we get them to a bowl. I've already think they've made their mind up. They don't want to get rid of it. They don't. The same reason they wouldn't build facilities for Jimbo is the reason they built facilities after Jimbo left. They spent a lot of their money, and what they've spent for those. They've just built a brand new exclusive football only facilities building. They've had a huge addition to their stadium. They gave him a huge contract with a big buyout, and both his new coordinators, Gus Malzahn and Tony West. What's Tony, the defensive coordinator?
White. I think it's White
from UCLA. Tony White came in. So huge contracts, and so the word out of Tallahassee is they can't afford to fire him unless they can't afford not to fire him. You know, if you lose the next 2 games and nobody shows up, or a bunch of boosters says my money's not where it was going to be, I don't think they can. I think they and you know, and going into after having such a bad year last year, where they went 2-10, going into the season, I looked at their team and where it was, and I said, this is a 2-year project. They just need to get to a bowl this year. Get a bowl this year, and if you're going to make it, you'll make it the next year. Then they go out and beat Alabama, and everybody expectations got so high. But to be honest with you, people have kind of figured Gus out there like they figured him out everywhere else. You know, after a while, he's still running the same type of thing, and he does a good job. But eventually, other teams pick up on the offensive scheme, and they do a better job defending it, beating it, you know, and beating them at what they do. And defensively, they cooled off, and so now it looks like to me they're going to probably be a 2-year project, you know. And the problem is they're a little bit like Auburn. You have too many losing seasons, and you no longer are in that elite standing. And that's kind of where Florida State had 2 years of losing seasons before Mike got there. His first 2 were losing seasons. Then he had 2 winning seasons, and now he's about to have 2 losing seasons again. So you can't do that very often, you know. But I think he'll be okay at Florida State. I don't see them changing coaching jobs unless they just tanked the last 2 games. They won this past weekend, and I think that helped.
Well, they've got NC State this weekend. Both teams are 5-5. They got at NC State and then at Florida. I don't know what to make of Florida, but
well, let me say this. I don't know if you've watched NC State. Now, NC State lost to Miami pretty bad, but I saw NC State beat Louisville. That quarterback they have there, I think his name's Chandler, or I think it's Chandler. He's 6'6", 215 pounds, and the scouts say he's going to be playing on Sundays at one day. But he has had a hot and cold career so far. He's just a sophomore. But he is a phenomenal athlete with NC State. But they've been hot and cold all year. You know, they opened up this season knocking off Virginia, who has the #1 record in the ACC. And then they've been kind of hot and cold. You know, they've won some games. They won some games. They beat Louisville pretty bad, you know, who was the second best team in the conference at that time, you know. And so that won't be an easy game for Florida State. That won't be an easy one. So maybe if they lose their last 2 and go 5-7, they start griping again. I don't know, but I have this feeling that they're going to have to suck it up and get through the season and then make their decisions next year on that one there.
Well, before we go, let's talk about our sponsor.
Oh, that's right. Let's a couple things. One is Tom Haley and the Haley Family Foundation, who sponsors our program. I can't say enough about them. We want to thank them. All I know is if you need to rent a house on the lake, I rented his house. He has a house he rents out on the Lake Martin that I took all of my family to a year or so ago. But Tom has done a great job of supporting Auburn athletics. Family has been involved with Auburn since his dad was an AD at Auburn, assistant AD at Auburn, coach at football coach, and Tom has been big in the community, big there. I'll see Tom Haley and a lot of people this weekend coming up, because this weekend at Mercer, they're honoring the '93 championship team. And I want to say that what's that?
It's about time.
Well, I was going to say, everybody, I'll be coming into town for that game, and they're going to honor us on the field. Our players. I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of the players there, and I think they're honoring all the new championship teams. I don't think it's just our team, and I don't know. That's just to get more people to show up for the Mercer game, but people come to Auburn games regardless. It seems like it'll be a great game, and it's a 12 noon or a 1 o'clock. I think it's a 1 o'clock game or whatever time it starts. I think it's an early game, and
it is a 1 p.m. kick.
1 p.m. game, yeah. So it'll be a 1 p.m. game, and so I look forward to seeing everybody there at that game. And a lot of my players and our players from the '93 team will be there for that game. And let's go there and see who's going to play at quarterback and get us a good win and get ready for the Iron Bowl.
Well, it's good to be with you again, and we thank everybody for listening. Our time's up. We thank you for yours, and click like and subscribe below. It keeps us in your feed and really helps us out.
For more than 100 years, the Haley Red Family Foundation has proudly supported Auburn University scholarships, investing in students' dreams and brighter futures. For over 25 years, we've also stood beside the Sheriff's Girls Ranch, helping young women find hope and opportunity. The Haley Red Family Foundation, built